A fallacy is a flaw in thinking that weakens the argument being made, and there is a flaw in atheism that often goes overlooked. A few things must be laid out for this theistic discussion. The first part draws from the philosophical discipline, while the second part draws from the mathematical. Today, zero is a fundamental part of mathematics, but historically it was a very controversial number. The notion that a null void had to be represented was ridiculed and shunned, yet it's in my mind the most philosophical number. The genius of zero is that it puts parameters on what some might call nothingness. It limits nothingness so that it is not endless. This means having zero of something is not the same as having nothing. When you have zero of something, that opens up workability. That null void now represents something specific. If you were to, for example, represent belief in God mathematically with X being belief in God, then anyone who believes in multiple gods would be represented by X as greater than 1, which in this theistic discussion would be called polytheism. If one believes in one God, then that can be represented mathematically as X is equal to 1, which in this theistic discussion would be called monotheism. If one were unsure of the existence of a God, which in theistic discussion is an agnostic, that could be represented as X is equal to and not equal to 1. So, at best, atheism can only be the belief in zero gods, but not no God. Those two things are not the same. Zero, as stated earlier, is a null void with limits. It limits nothingness. Thus it has the parameter of at the very least being a theistic discussion. Secondly, one of atheism's best arguments is that there is no evidence of God. So in theory, if evidence were to be provided, that would change their minds. But the claim of there is no God undermines that, since there is no level of evidence that is acceptable. But at the very least, the belief in zero gods allows for the possibility, thus giving the mathematical representation of X is equal to 0.